All right, let's get right into it. Today's December 19th, 2024, and we've got a ton of cybersecurity news to unpack.
Yeah, no shortage of headlines today.
Let's kick things off with CISA.
Right, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, they just released some new guidance on mobile security.
Specifically for high-profile government figures. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's interesting timing given all the activity we've been seeing from these advanced persistent threat groups.
Especially those focused on mobile espionage,
Mm-hmm.
like Salt Typhoon, that China-based group.
Yeah, they've been making a lot of noise lately.
You know, what struck me about these CISA recommendations was the level of detail they went into.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just high-level stuff. They're getting down to specifics like use this encrypted messaging app, Signal. Make sure you've got hardware-based multi-factor authentication.
Right.
Keep your device firmware up to date.
It seems like they're acknowledging that mobile devices are now a primary target
Absolutely.
for sophisticated attackers, I mean.
I mean, think about it. Your phone, it's a treasure trove of sensitive data.
Emails, documents, financial accounts, you name it.
And often, they're not as secure as our traditional endpoints.
Definitely a wake-up call for all of us.
I think so, yeah.
Even though these guidelines are aimed at government personnel, I think there are valuable lessons here for anyone who cares about mobile security.
100%. Okay, let's move on. We've also got this sentencing of Mark Sokolovsky.
The Ukrainian national.
Yeah.
5 years in prison for running that Raccoon InfoStealer malware.
Raccoon InfoStealer. And this was distributed as a service, right?
Meaning anyone could pay to use it. That's what's really concerning.
Exactly, that accessibility. It just highlights how easy it's become to get your hands on these cybercrime tools.
Especially on the dark web.
You don't even need a lot of technical skills anymore.
It's pretty scary when you think about it.
We're talking about over 50 million credentials stolen through phishing campaigns.
And that's just from this one operation.
And then there's Cisco. Looks like they're on a bit of a shopping spree.
Oh, yeah.
In the cybersecurity space, I mean. They just announced plans to acquire SnapAttack.
SnapAttack. I'm not familiar with them.
They specialize in threat detection engineering and intelligence. And this follows their acquisition of Robust Intelligence earlier this year.
Right. And of course, the big Splunk deal.
Exactly. So they're clearly making some big moves.
I'm a little skeptical, to be honest.
Oh.
Integrating all these different technologies, cultures, it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
Cisco doesn't exactly have the best track record when it comes to large acquisitions.
That's a fair point. I still have to wait and see how it plays out.
For sure.
Okay, switching gears now. We've got Fortinet, a major cybersecurity player, issuing patches for a critical vulnerability.
Uh-oh.
This one's in their 40WLM wireless management system.
I'm listening.
It's tracked as CVE 2023-34990, and it could allow for unauthorized remote code execution.
Yikes. That's basically giving an attacker full control
Yeah, not good.
on which versions are affected.
Multiple versions of the software, apparently. So if you're using Fortinet products, patch this vulnerability ASAP.
Absolutely. No messing around with that.
And speaking of emerging threats, Sandbox AQ.
The Alphabet spinoff.
Yeah, they just secured a massive $300 million in funding.
Wow.
Gives them a valuation of $5.3 billion.
What are they focused on?
AI and quantum technologies, primarily.
Interesting.
Applied to cybersecurity, cryptography, even navigation.
Ambitious.
They've got this flagship product, Acutive Guard.
Acutive Guard.
It's designed to address both current and future quantum threats.
So they're thinking long term.
It's definitely a forward-thinking approach,
Yeah.
recognizing that quantum computing is going to have a huge impact on cybersecurity.
I agree. Although I do think there's a danger of overhyping the quantum threat.
How so?
We're still in the very early stages of quantum computing.
Yeah.
I think widespread practical applications, especially for code breaking, are still years, if not decades away.
It's important to keep things in perspective.
Exactly. Let's not lose sight of the immediate challenges we're facing.
Agreed. Let's move on to Google.
What's up with Google?
They just released a new Chrome update, addresses 5 vulnerabilities.
Including
Some high-severity memory safety flaws.
those can be nasty.
What's interesting here is their bug bounty program.
Oh, yeah. How much did they pay out?
Up to $55,000 to researchers who discovered these vulnerabilities.
Not bad.
Shows that they're serious about incentivizing security research.
And proactive about addressing vulnerabilities.
Right. And they're also making a strategic shift by transitioning parts of Chrome's code base To Rust.
Rust.
It's a programming language known for its memory safety features.
Ah, so they're trying to mitigate the risk of memory-related vulnerabilities in the future. Smart.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk about Mirai,
Mirai. Isn't that the infamous botnet?
the one and only. It's back in action.
What are they targeting this time?
Juniper Network session smart routers.
Really? And what's the vulnerability?
Default passwords.
You're kidding.
Nope.
Default passwords. In 2024. Come on.
That's a classic.
It's a persistent problem.
And it highlights a really important point. Organizations need to enforce strong password policies.
Absolutely. And they need to do regular security audits to catch these weaknesses.
Even basic security hygiene can make a huge difference.
No doubt.
Okay, speaking of basic hygiene, have you heard about all these typo squatting attacks on NPM?
Type is squatting on NPM.
It's becoming a real problem.
What are we talking about here?
We're seeing these malicious packages that mimic legitimate tools.
Like?
TypeScript and Node.js libraries, for example.
And they're slipping through the cracks.
They're using these subtle name variations. It's easy to get tricked.
So what happens when someone installs one of these malicious packages?
They deliver Trojans, other harmful payloads,
The goal being?
to compromise developers and infiltrate the software supply chain.
That's a big problem.
It is. It highlights the need for developers to be incredibly vigilant.
When they're installing packages.
Yeah. Scrutinize those package names carefully. And verify their authenticity.
Right. You can't just assume everything on NPM is safe.
Exactly. Okay, next up, GDPR.
GDPR. What's the latest?
Netflix just got hit with a hefty fine.
How hefty are we talking?
$4.75 million.
Ouch. What did they do?
They weren't transparent about their data practices,
Meaning?
their data sharing and retention policies. They weren't clearly disclosed to users.
That's a no-no under GDPR.
Exactly. And this fine emphasizes just how important clear and concise data privacy policies are.
Especially with all the scrutiny around data privacy these days.
It's not just about compliance anymore.
Yeah.
It's about building trust with users.
And demonstrating a commitment to responsible data stewardship.
Exactly. All right, let's shift gears again. Geopolitical landscape.
What's happening on that front?
U.S. and China. Tensions are rising.
Cyber espionage, right.
Both sides are accusing each other of it.
Any specific incidents?
China's cybersecurity agencies is alleging that the U.S. is conducting cyber attacks on Chinese research institutions and tech companies.
What are they saying?
They're claiming the U.S. is exploiting vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange and using Trojans to steal sensitive data.
Those are serious allegations.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Difficult to verify independently, of course.
Of course.
But it does underscore this growing role of cyber warfare.
In international relations.
Yeah. And we're seeing this blurring of lines between nation-state actors and criminal groups.
Making attribution and response even more complex.
Exactly. Now, let's not forget about the holiday season.
Oh yeah, that's right. Prime time for cyber attacks.
Retailers are especially vulnerable.
Increased online traffic.
Distracted shoppers.
Overloaded system.
It's like a perfect storm for cyber criminals.
So what can retailers do to protect themselves?
They need to be extra vigilant, for sure.
Strengthen their IT infrastructure.
Implement robust fraud detection systems.
And educate both employees and customers about potential scams.
Absolutely. Okay, one last story for this segment. Milestone, the video management software company. They've just released patches for a vulnerability
Where?
in Hikvision drivers that are integrated with their Expertech software.
What kind of vulnerability are we talking about?
This one allowed login credentials to be stored in plaintext logs.
Oh, wow. That's a major security risk.
Huge. But Milestone acted quickly to address it.
Good.
It highlights how important prompt patching is and responsible vulnerability disclosure practices.
Absolutely. Collaboration between vendors and security researchers is key.
Couldn't agree more.
You know, it's funny. This Hikvision driver vulnerability,
Yeah.
it really just reminds us that security isn't always about preventing these big external attacks.
Right.
It's also about securing internal systems.
And processes.
Exactly. Logging sensitive information in plain text. That's like Cybersecurity 101.
Yeah, a pretty basic misstep.
And it could have been avoided.
It really highlights the importance of secure coding practices.
And thorough security testing.
Throughout the entire software development lifecycle.
From start to finish.
You can have all the fancy firewalls and intrusion detection systems in the world,
Right.
but a simple oversight like this
Can completely undermine your security posture.
Totally.
Oh.
Okay, let's zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
Look at some of the broader trends here.
All right.
The CISA mobile security guidelines,
Yeah.
The Netflix GDPR fine, even the Cisco acquisitions.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
There's a growing emphasis on data privacy and protection.
No doubt about it.
We're seeing increased scrutiny on how organizations are collecting, storing, and sharing user data.
And the regulatory landscape is changing rapidly.
The consequences for non-compliance are getting more severe.
Big time.
But it's not just about avoiding fines.
Right.
It's about building trust with your users.
Showing them that you're committed to protecting their data.
Exactly. Responsible data stewardship.
That's the key.
And it all comes back to the human element.
At the end of the day, yeah.
These type of squatting attacks on NPM.
Right.
The Juniper routers with default passwords.
They all prey on human error.
Human fallibility.
It's a constant battle.
We can implement all the technology in the world, but
humans are still the weakest link.
that's why security awareness training is more important than ever.
100%.
Organizations need to invest in educating their employees.
About the threats, the best practices.
How to spot a phishing email.
Or how to create strong passwords.
The importance of reporting suspicious activity.
All of it.
And it can't just be a one-time thing.
No, definitely not.
It needs to be an ongoing process.
Regular communication, practical exercises.
Build a culture of security awareness.
That's the goal.
Okay, so we've talked about addressing immediate threats.
Right.
But let's not forget about the future.
The future.
Sandbox AQ and their focus on quantum-resistant cryptography.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Quantum computing. It has the potential to revolutionize a lot of fields.
Cybersecurity included.
Big time. And while practical quantum computers are still a ways off,
we need to start preparing now.
their eventual arrival could make our current encryption algorithms obsolete.
Think about it. All that sensitive data we've encrypted,
Right.
suddenly vulnerable.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
It's a scenario we need to be ready for.
Isn't that a bit alarmist, though?
Ah,
I mean, some experts say quantum-resistant algorithms already exist.
they do.
We have plenty of time to transition.
We do have some time.
So are we overreacting?
I wouldn't say overreacting. It's more about being prepared.
Okay.
The real challenge is widespread adoption and implementation.
Getting everyone on board with these new standards.
Exactly. It's not going to be easy.
It'll require a lot of collaboration.
Between governments, industry, researchers.
It's a massive undertaking.
And there's always the potential for unforeseen challenges.
Right. Quantum computing is developing so rapidly.
We can't predict what new threats might emerge.
It's a good reminder that cybersecurity is constantly evolving.
We need to stay agile.
Adapt to new technologies, new threats.
And prioritize security at every level.
From the individual user to the enterprise.
Absolutely.
Speaking of evolving threats, these accusations of cyber espionage between the U.S. and China.
Yeah, what a mess.
It really highlights the growing role of cyberspace in geopolitical conflicts.
It's a new battleground.
And the stakes are incredibly high.
And the problem is, attribution is so difficult in cyberspace.
It's often impossible to say with certainty who's behind an attack.
Especially with the lines blurring between state-sponsored actors and criminal groups.
It's a complex landscape.
And it's only going to get more complex.
Cybersecurity professionals need to understand these geopolitical dynamics.
Because they directly impact the threat landscape.
Okay, back down to earth for a minute.
Okay.
The holiday season is upon us.
Oh boy, here we go.
And as we all know,
cybercriminals love the holidays.
they're opportunistic.
They thrive on chaos and distraction.
And retailers are particularly vulnerable during this time.
We see it every year.
Increased online traffic, holiday promotions, overloaded systems.
It's a recipe for disaster.
So what can retailers do?
First and foremost, they need to strengthen their IT infrastructure.
Make sure their systems are patched and up to date.
Robust firewalls, intrusion detection systems.
A solid incident response plan.
All critical.
And let's not forget about the human element.
Right.
Employee training is essential.
Make sure they know how to spot a phishing scam.
Social engineering tactics.
Strong password hygiene.
All that good stuff.
And don't forget about customer education.
Right.
Retailers need to be proactive about communicating with their customers.
Warn them about potential scams.
Advise them on how to identify fraudulent websites.
Protect their personal information.
Transparency and clear communication are key.
Absolutely.
It's a lot to take in, right?
It is.
I mean, today's news really highlights just how broad the cybersecurity landscape is.
It does.
From nation-state espionage to, something as basic as weak passwords.
It's a good reminder that cybersecurity is not just about technology.
Right.
It's about people, processes, awareness.
The whole package.
We talked about some pretty sophisticated attacks today.
We did.
But a lot of breaches still exploit really basic security oversights.
It's true.
It's like, you install this state-of-the-art security system in your backyard,
Right.
but you leave the front door unlocked.
Makes no sense.
Exactly.
Organizations need to make sure they're not neglecting the basics.
Block passwords.
Multi-factor authentication.
Regular security audits.
The fundamentals.
And especially now, heading into the holiday season.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good time for everyone to be extra vigilant.
Cyber criminals are out in full force this time of year.
They're looking to exploit any weakness they can find.
So as we wrap up, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Stay informed.
Absolutely. The threat landscape is constantly changing.
Keep up with the latest news.
New vulnerabilities.
New attack trends.
Knowledge is power.
Second, prioritize security awareness.
Yes.
Educate yourself.
Educate your employees.
Educate your customers.
About potential threats and best practices.
Don't assume everyone knows this stuff.
No, not at all.
And third, don't neglect the basics.
This is so important.
Strong passwords.
Multi-factor authentication.
Timely patching.
These things can prevent the majority of attacks.
And finally, remember that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility.
We all have a role to play.
In creating a more secure digital world.
Exactly.
That's it for our Cybersecurity News Roundup for December 19th, 2024.
Stay vigilant out there.
Stay informed.
That's staying safe.
Cybersecurity HQ, your hub for jobs, reports, news, and a newsletter read by 70,000 plus professionals weekly.